Hey guys, I'm JC and today we're playing Azami, Lady of Scrolls. This is a wizard tribal deck that looks to control the board, draw a lot of cards, and then weaponize that card draw to win the game. If you'd like to build this deck, make sure to stop by the channel where we have a deck tech as well as other gameplay videos showing how the deck was built as well as how it plays out. In addition, we also have a Discord group with the channel dedicated specifically to Azami, so if you'd like to discuss the deck more, make sure to stop by and check it out. There'll be a link in the description below. Let's show our opponents how powerful wizards and drawing cards can really be. Alrighty guys, let's see who we're playing today. We have the Ur-Dragon, we have Jinnie Fay Jetmir second, and to round it out, we have Jin-Gitaxias Progress Tyrant. Alright, let's take a look at our opening hand. I think it's a pretty good keep here. We have interaction, well we have quite a bit of interaction here, and we're probably going to need it for Jin-Gitaxias on its own, so let's keep this. Jin starts us off by playing a land for turn, and then they cast a Soul Ring. Something we're not happy to see turn 1 for Jin-Gitaxias, that's for sure. But that is going to be it for their turn. We draw a land for turn. Well, let's play our land, and then we'll just sit back on our open mana. The Ur-Dragon plays a fetch land for turn. They crack it right away. They put a Zeator as Proving Ground into play tapped, and then they pass the turn. Jinnie plays a fetch land. They crack it. They put a Jetmir's Garden into play tapped, and then they pass the turn. Jin plays a land, and now they cast a Padim, Console of Innovation. Artifacts you control have hexproof. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control the artifact with the highest mana value or tied for the highest mana value, draw a card. And that's going to be it for them. We draw a Nykthos for turn. Well, let's just play our island, and then I think we've just got to pass the turn and hold up our interaction. The Ur-Dragon plays a land, but they just pass the turn. Jinnie plays a land, and then they cast Impact Tremors. Whenever a creature ETBs under your control, Impact Tremors deals 1 damage to each opponent. And that's going to be it for the Jinnie player. On Jin's upkeep, Padim does trigger, and they do currently control the only artifact, so they will draw a card. They start by casting a Felwar Stone, and they also cast an Ethereum Sculptor. Artifact spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. After that, they play a land for turn, a Mystic Sanctuary. Now they move to combat, but they decide not to attack, and then they pass the turn. We draw a Thought Vessel for turn. Unfortunately, as much as I'd like to cast that ramp, I think we have to hold up our counter magic for Jin-Gitaxias, which probably will come down next turn. So let's play our island for turn, and then we'll cast our Siren Storm Tamer. And after that, we'll pass the turn. But it looks like the Ur-Dragon player has missed their land drop here because they're just moving straight to their end step. A little unfortunate for them, so they're just going to pass the turn over to Jinnie. And the Ur-Dragon player does discard a Balefire Dragon. Jinnie starts by playing a land, and now they cast their commander, Jinnie Fay Jetmir second. If you would create 1 or more tokens, you may instead create that many 2/2 green cat creature tokens with haste, or that many 3/1 green dog creature tokens with vigilance. Now when it ETBs, that does trigger Impact Tremors. Now Jinnie moves to their end step, and on their end step they cast Mystical Tutor. Search your library for an instant or sorcery card, reveal it, then shuffle and put that card on top. Well, this isn't going to be good. I'm guessing they're going to get something like a Force of Will, because they know we're holding up our mana for Jin-Gitaxias. So we might be in a bit of trouble here. No, but instead they get a Thought Cast, Affinity for Artifacts, and draw 2 cards. But now we move to the Jin-Gitaxias player's turn. On their upkeep, Padim does trigger, and once again they will be able to draw a card. They play a land for turn. After that, they start by casting a Spellskite. You can pay blue or Phyrexian mana, change a target spell or ability to Spellskite. They might know we're holding up mana for Jin, that's why they're not casting it right now. We'll take the time that we can buy, any time is going to be good for us at the moment, and after that they also cast a Thought Cast. Draw a few more cards, probably looking for some protection for Jin. And after that, they cast a Fabricate. Search your library for an artifact card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. We'll let that one go through. And it looks like they find themselves a Mana Crypt. They cast that Mana Crypt right away. After that, they cast a Mirage Mirror. Pay 2, Mirage Mirror becomes a copy of target artifact, creature, enchantment, or land until end of turn. And after that, they also cast a Thought Monitor. Affinity for artifacts, flying, and when Thought Monitor ETBs, draw 2 cards. Well, the Jin player is certainly popping off this turn. It's going to be hard for us to hold them back if we're the only player that's probably going to be interacting with them, so let's hope the Ur-Dragon or Jinnie does have something to be able to help us out. Now they move to combat. But once again, they decide not to attack, and then they pass the turn. We draw a Galecaster Colossus for turn. Let's start by getting down our Nykthos. And I think we'll also try to cast our Thought Vessel here because Jawari Disruption probably isn't going to really be a great counterspell at the moment with all the mana that Jin has available to them. And we do have to eventually try to get into our game plan and not go too slow. So let's cast our Thought Vessel. And then we'll pass the turn from here. The Ur-Dragon player starts by casting a 3 visits. Well, at least they are getting their 3rd land for turn. And that is going to be it for their turn. Jinnie plays a land. And after that, they cast a Smothering Tithe. Whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay 2. If the player doesn't, you create a treasure token. Very powerful card in that deck, but we are going to let it through. I'm still more worried about what Jin-Gitaxias is going to be able to do. And hopefully the Jinnie Fay player might be able to pressure the Jin-Gitaxias player's life total if they do start getting a lot of dogs and cats on board. Now they move to combat. Jinnie swings towards the Ur-Dragon player. So no sympathy for them missing land drops. And then they pass the turn. On Jin's upkeep, Mana Crypt and Padim both trigger. They win the flip, so they take no damage. And they'll also draw a card. That does trigger Smothering Tithe. And they don't pay. But Jinnie opts to make a treasure token. They'll also draw a card on their draw step. And it looks like this time they do pay. They play a land for turn. And Academy Ruins, so they will be able to recur artifacts now. Next, they move to combat. But they pass through combat. And it looks like they're just passing the turn. So maybe they don't have interaction in their hand to protect Jin-Gitaxias. We'll take that. On our upkeep, it looks like Jin-Gitaxias is actually activating their Mirage Mirror, and it looks like it's becoming a copy of Smothering Tithe. So we draw a card, a Riptide Laboratory. That will trigger Smothering Tithe twice. We won't pay for either. We'll play our island for turn. And then we'll pass the turn. So we're having quite a slow game at the moment. And it seems like the guns are being pointed towards each other between the 2 mono blue decks. We really have to do this at the moment with how far Jin-Gitaxias has gotten ahead. We just have to hope we get a few more turns to be able to establish our board state and actually start getting our game plan online. Now on the Ur-Dragon's draw step, Smothering Tithe does trigger. They don't pay. Jinnie's continuing to accumulate the treasure tokens. Now the Ur-Dragon does play a land for turn, a Reliquary Tower, so they'll have no maximum hand size. After that, they cast a Kadama's Reach. So it seems they're starting to finally address their mana issues. They might be able to bring themselves back into this game. And that is going to be it for their turn. On Jinnie's upkeep, it looks like Jin is activating their Mirage Mirror, becoming a copy of Smothering Tithe once again. On Jinnie's draw step, that does trigger Smothering Tithe. And they don't pay. And after that, they cast an Anointed Procession. If an effect would create 1 or more tokens under your control, it creates twice that many of those tokens instead. Very powerful combination with their Smothering Tithe, but I just don't know if it's going to be enough with how far Jin-Gitaxias is ahead at the moment. Certainly will do a lot of damage with that Impact Tremors though when they start converting those treasures to dogs or cats. And it looks like after that they cast a Tireless Provisioner. It has landfall. Whenever a land ETBs under your control, create a food token or a treasure token. When Provisioner ETBs, that triggers Impact Tremors. Will each take a damage. They play a land for turn, that does trigger Tireless Provisioner. They opt to make 2 Hasty Cats this time, and that triggers Impact Tremors twice. And then they cast a Reese the Redeemed. You can pay 3, tap it, create a 1/1 green and white elf warrior creature token, or pay 6 and tap it. For each creature token you control, create a token that's a copy of that creature. When that also ETBs, that triggers Impact Tremors once again. Okay, well the Jinnie Fay player is starting to look pretty scary now. They move to combat. It looks like Jinnie's swinging towards us. We have a cat going towards the Ur-Dragon player, as well as the other cat. We're going to take the damage. We go down to 32, and the Ur-Dragon player goes down to 27. And that is going to be it for their turn. On Jin's upkeep, Padim and Mana Crypt trigger. They lose the Mana Crypt flip, taking 3 damage. They'll also draw a card from Padim. And they do pay the 2 mana for Smothering Tithe. Now on their draw step, Smothering Tithe does trigger. But it looks like they're paying for it once again. After that, Jin casts Displace a Kitten. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, exile up to 1 target non-land permanent you control, then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. Okay, that is quite a dangerous spell. And this might be something we'd want to pull our trigger on here. But again, I feel like we might actually have to hold it up for Jin-Gitaxias. In saying that, they do have their Mirage Mirror, so if they do copy Displace a Kitten, every non-creature spell they're going to be able to cast is going to essentially be able to get them 4 mana, thanks to bouncing their Soul Ring and their Mana Crypt, which is going to be pretty horrible to deal with. But I think we'll let it go through for this one here, because we do have Resculpt, and we can take care of it on the battlefield, and we'll hold up our counterspell for Jin, because the counterspell is going to be a lot more useful for Jin-Gitaxias on the stack, as opposed to once it already resolves and it starts countering our spells. Next, they do cast Dramatic Reversal. Untap all non-land permanents you control, and that also triggers their Displacer Kitten. And it looks like they're targeting their Soul Ring with that. We're in a tough predicament here. That Spellskite is going to be able to redirect these spells. Now, if they do untap, they'll be able to cast Jin-Gitaxias. I think we just really need to hold up our counterspell for that, and just hope they don't have too much interaction in their hands. So we'll let this go through. It's definitely a tough spot to be in. Well, it looks like they are going for Jin-Gitaxias here. I don't think we need to hold back on this. Let's cast our counter spell and see what they've got for us. And that does counter Jin. They were probably expecting it, but they wanted to try anyway. And sometimes you just have to against mono blue decks. You got to force the interaction out of their hand. Now they move to combat, but they pass through combat. And that's going to be it for their turn. We draw a Force of Negation for turn. That also triggers Smothering Tithe. But we won't pay once again. I really don't like it that we're fueling the Jinnie Fay play here, but we're caught between a rock and a hard place. We're really just picking our poison at the moment. Now they decide to make 2 cats. That triggers Impact Tremors twice. We're going to play our Riptide Laboratory for turn. And now it's time to finally cast our Commander Azami. That goes through. And from here, we're going to pass the turn. Our card advantage engine may be coming in a little too late here with how far Jin has gotten ahead as well as Jinnie. But if we can just hope that Jinnie directs all of their attention towards Jin and vice versa, we may be able to squeeze our way out of this. If we just get another turn or two, I think we'll get enough card advantage going that we can come back into the game, but it's looking a little dicey, I'm going to be honest. But hey, maybe the Ur-Dragon player has something for us here. Maybe they wipe the board and slow things down a little bit. Now on the Ur-Dragon's draw step, Smothering Tithe does trigger. They don't pay. Jinnie makes 2 more cat tokens. That triggers Impact Tremors 2 more times. Next, they play a land for turn. And now they cast a Gwenna, Eyes of Gaia. Tap, add 2 mana in any combination of colors. Spend this mana only to cast creature spells or activate abilities of a creature or creature card. And whenever you cast a creature spell with power 5 or greater, put a 1/1 counter on Gwenna and untap it. After that, they also cast a Fist of Suns. You may pay Wooburg rather than pay the mana cost for spells that you cast. And then they pass the turn. On Jinnie Fay's upkeep, Jin has their Mirage Mirror become a copy of Smothering Tithe. On Jinnie's draw step, Smothering Tithe does trigger for Jin. But they don't pay. Next, they cast a Swords to Plowshares, targeting the Padim. Let's see if Jin activates Spellskite in response. It looks like they don't. And after that, they cast a Feline Sovereign. Other cats you control get +1/+1 and have protection from dogs. And whenever one or more cats you control deal combat damage to a player, destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment that player controls. Okay, well, a little bit late to the party, but that is going to be nice interaction against the Jin-Gitaxias player. That will also trigger Impact Tremors when it ETBs. Now they move to combat. It looks like the cat army is going towards Jin-Gitaxias, like we hoped. So I think Jin is going to have to block here. Otherwise their life total is going to get dangerously low. Yep, so they are blocking with Spellskite, and they're using their Thought Monitor as well. No, they're deciding to pull it back. Now it's just the Thought Monitor that's blocking. No, the Spellskite comes back in. It looks like they settled on those blocks. The Thought Monitor goes down, that knocks Jin down to 16, and that also triggers Feline Sovereign. And they decide to target the Soul Ring with that one. I don't know, I think myself I probably would have targeted the Smothering Tithe, taking out the Mirage Mirrors so they couldn't get 2 copies of Displacer Kitten. In response, Jin activates their Spellskite, changing the target to Spellskite. Spellskite goes down. Now Jinnie moves to their end step. I think this is the moment we take our chance to get rid of that Displacer Kitten once and for all. So let's just hope that this goes through. And it does, thankfully. And now we can go to the Jin-Gitaxias player's turn. They have received a lot of attention this game, but with that fast Soul Ring start, in addition to Mana Crypt and a lot of the other mana that they played out, this is just what happens to you sometimes. You do attract the attention. I know it when I play my Memnarch deck with all the mana it has in there, it does attract eyes pretty quickly. Now on their upkeep, Mana Crypt does trigger. But in response to their Mana Crypt, they activate their Academy Ruins, and it looks like they're targeting their Thought Monitor. So they probably want to draw some cards here. They lose the Mana Crypt flip, taking 3 damage. Now on their draw step, Smothering Tithe does trigger. But they don't pay. They make 2 more cats, that triggers Impact Tremors 2 more times. In response to the last Impact Tremors, I'm actually going to draw some cards here, using Azami, because we're not going to be blocking with these wizards. And just in case the Jin-Gitaxias player does scoop on us, so I don't want to lose the chance to draw some cards. On Magic Online, you've always got to be prepared for that. So our first draw is a Sky Diamond. That triggers Smothering Tithe, we won't pay. That'll trigger Impact Tremors 3 more times. And then we'll pass on our last wizard. We'll just wait and see what happens. Jin starts by casting their Thought Monitor. So they get to draw 2 cards from that. That will trigger Smothering Tithe 2 more times. But they decide to make treasures this time. And they do the same with the second Smothering Tithe trigger. Next, Jin plays a land for turn. And then they cast a Joyrus Familiar. It's a flyer, and historic spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. After that, they also cast a Shimmermere. It has flash, and you may cast artifact spells as though they had flash. Now they move to combat. They decide to pass through combat. Now they move to their end step. We're going to activate Azami 1 more time to draw a card. We get ourselves a Sea Scryer. So unfortunately not an answer to what Jinnie Fay's doing at the moment. That triggers Smothering Tithe, but we won't be able to pay. And Jinnie decides to make some more cats this time. That triggers Impact Tremors 2 more times. So Jin is down to 5, we're down to 21, and the Ur-Dragon is down to 16. And then we go to our turn. All right, let's see what we get off the top of our deck. Hopefully something good. And we get a Cyclonic Rift. Well, if you could hope for any better answer, I don't know what it could be at this moment. Now that does trigger Smothering Tithe. We're definitely not going to pay for that. They decide to make some more cats. That triggers Impact Tremors 2 more times. So I think all we'll do this turn is play our Jiraiya Disruption as a land. Then we're going to pass the turn. So I think we may have a chance here, guys, if we resolve this Cyclonic Rift. We just have to kill the Jin-Gitaxias players so that we know our Cyclonic Rift isn't going to get countered. So if we wait until the Ur-Dragon player's turn, we let the Jinnie player make a few more tokens, kill Jin, and then cast our Cyclonic Rift at the right time, we might be able to come back into this. On the Ur-Dragon's draw step, Smothering Tithe does trigger, but they don't pay. Jinnie decides to actually make some treasures this time. Next, the Ur-Dragon plays a land. And then they cast Ganax, Astral Hunter. It's a flyer, and whenever Ganax or another dragon ETBs under your control, create a treasure token. So now when Ganax ETBs, they will make their treasure. And after that, they cast a Genesis Ultimatum. Look at the top 5 cards of your library, put any number of permanent cards from among them onto the battlefield and the rest into your hand. Exile Genesis Ultimatum. Looks like Jin has a response to that, and they're not letting that happen. They cast a Force of Negation. Okay, well that's one counter spell out of the Jin player's hand, which could have went on our Cyclonic Rift. Though at the moment, I'm not too sure if they would actually try to stop our Cyclonic Rift because they are just going to be dead on board to the Jinnie player when they move to combat next turn. So maybe they do let it through, but you never know what people are thinking, and you can't always bank on it either. What you think might be the logical choice doesn't always correspond with what other players think the logical choice may be. Now they move to their end step. We're going to activate Azami to draw a card. And we get ourselves a Venser, Shaper Savant. That triggers Smothering Tithe. We won't pay, and we just got to really hope that they opt to make the bodies here. And thankfully they do. They make 2 more cats. That triggers Impact Tremors twice. Alright, the Jinnie Fay player is tapping out for a lot of white mana here, so maybe they're going for an X spell to create a lot of bodies. No, instead they're activating their Reese the Redeemed. That actually has the Jin-Gitaxias player scoop it up. Okay, well we'll respond to that by tapping our Siren Storm Tamer to draw a card. And we draw a Cavern of Souls. That triggers Smothering Tithe, and we won't pay. And they make a couple of more cats. That triggers Impact Tremors twice. We'll take the damage. That knocks us down to 15 and the Ur-Dragon player down to 10. Alright, let's try and cast our Cyclonic Rift. That goes through. The Reese the Redeemed trigger will fizzle. And that is it for the Ur-Dragon player. Alright, well we still have a game on our hands here, guys. That's for sure. Jinnie starts by playing a land. Next, they recast their Impact Tremors. And finally, they recast their Smothering Tithe. And that is going to be it for them. And as we move to our turn, we actually have the Ur-Dragon player scoop it up. So now it looks like we have a 1v1 on our hands. Now on our draw step, Smothering Tithe does trigger. We also draw a Felwar Stone for turn. And we will actually pay here. Next, we'll play our Cavern of Souls for turn. We're going to name Wizard. After that, we'll cast our Felwar Stone. And then we'll cast our Galecaster Colossus. And that is going to be it for our turn. Jinnie starts by casting a Soul Ring. After that, they cast a Panharmonicon. If an artifact or creature ETB and causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. Alright, we'll let that through. And after that, they cast their Tireless Provisioner. We'll respond to that. We'll start by bouncing the Impact Tremors. And then we'll also bounce the Panharmonicon. Provisioner resolves. Then they move to their end step. We're going to bounce that Smothering Tithe. And then we'll move to our turn. But it looks like with that, they have had enough. They don't want to go through the mono blue shenanigans. So that is the game done there, guys. Let's go to the review and discuss what happened. So looking at the first half of this game, we were really fighting an uphill battle. The Jin-Gitaxias player got off to a fast start, which forced us to hold up interaction to try to keep them at bay, all the while Jinnie Fay was developing a dangerous board state with no interaction to slow them down. However, in the second half of this game is where our patience really paid off. We interacted where we needed to, resolved Azami to not only draw some cards, but help take out the Jin-Gitaxias player thanks to that Impact Tremors, and then we cast a timely Cyclonic Rift to swing the game in our favour. This game was a really good demonstration of the difficulties and rewards of playing a control deck. It can be hard sometimes to know when to interact, and it takes a lot of practice and patience to get right, but when you do, you get comeback games like these that feel very rewarding. Well, that's it for today's video. If you enjoy seeing games from a particular commander on the channel and you want to see more, make sure to check out our playlists on the channel where you'll find all the games for that commander in one neat, easy to find place. Until next time, guys.